So we've been given this equation or an equation, and we've manipulated it, worked it so that we could isolate y to find slope-intercept. Now we're going to try to come up with the equation. We'll be given some information. We'll be given the slope in some cases and a point that's on the line, and then we want to come up with the equation that represents that information, or we may be given 2 points on a line or want to come up with the equation of the line that fits those 2 points. So our first and foremost, we're going to write the equation in slope-intercept form using the given information. That given information is going to be the slope and a point. Okay, so remember this is y equals mx plus b. That's our slope-intercept form. So right away we're given m, that will plug in there, and y-intercept, that represents the b in our equation. So we can rewrite this as y equals what our slope is, which is 8x plus b. And b is a -3, so plus a -3 would be the same as -3. And there we have the equation of our line. All right, next one. Our slope is -2/3 and the y-intercept is 5, and we want to find the equation in slope-intercept form using that information. Again, rather than giving us the m equals, slope is the same thing as the lowercase m in our equation. Y-intercept is the b, so in order to write the equation, we will just write y equals our slope of a -2/3 x, and make sure x isn't in the denominator, it's out to the side of that fraction, kind of like cutting the fraction bar in half. That's where your x needs to be. And then our y-intercept is 5, that's a positive, so we'll go plus 5. And there's your equation. So that's the simplest it will be when you're given the slope and the y-intercept. Now we're going to look at where you're given your slope and a point on the line. So in our equation we have y equals mx plus b. And here's our m, here's m, and then we're going to use the 2 and the 5 in our equation for x and y. So our slope is going to be 3, x is 2 because that's the x coordinate of the point that we're given, and y is going to equal 5 because 5 is the y coordinate of the point that is given. So going back to this equation, where I see m here, I'm going to plug in 3. Where I see x, I'm going to plug in 2. Where I see y, I'm going to plug in 5, because none of the information that we have been given is the y-intercept, is it? It's a point on the line, but that's not the y-intercept, and it's the slope. So in order for us to put it in this equation, we have to know what the y-intercept is. So we're going to use what they gave us, the slope, one x value and one y value, to help us find b. So that looks like this. Y is 5. We got that from here. So we're going to write 5 equals slope, which is 3, times x, which is 2, plus b, our y-intercept. Billion, you writing this down? So we're going to simplify now. 3 times 2 is 6. So our equation becomes 5 equals 6 plus b. And then we want to solve for b, so that means subtracting 6, so that b is a -1. So now we have the b value, we have the m value, we can rewrite our equation, the y equals mx plus b, plugging that information in. So we're going back to this equation, we're only substituting a value in for slope and for the y-intercept, and then that's our final answer, which is the equation of the line that has a slope of 3 that goes through the point 2, 5. And it's in slope-intercept form. -1 because m represents the slope. And what value are we putting in for x? The x-coordinate of our point, which happens to be 3. And then what value are we using for y? 2, which is the y-coordinate of the point given. So we're going to use those 3 values in this equation to help us solve for b, so that we can rewrite it. So where I see y, I'm going to put what number? 2 equals, where I see m, I'm going to use -1. Where I see x, I'm going to use 3. I don't know what the value of b is, that's why I'm plugging these things in so that I can find that. So I get y is 2. 2 equals the slope times the x plus the y-intercept, which is what I'm trying to find. -1 times 3 is a -3. And now I need to isolate b, get b by itself. So that's going to involve adding 3 to both sides. And I get b equals 5. So now I can come back up here, and I'm going to plug what I know in for slope and what I know in for the y-intercept, and I'll have my equation. So I'm going to rewrite this as y equals the slope, which is a -1x, plus the y-intercept as 5. And there's the equation of the line in slope-intercept form that has a slope of a -1, and it goes through the point 3, 2. All right, so we have to identify 3 important parts: the slope, the x, and the y. And the slope is 2/3. The x is the x-coordinate of the point given. The y is the y-coordinate of the point given. Now we're going to take those 3 values and plug them into this equation to help us find the y-intercept, which is b. So y is a -5 equals the slope is 2/3. The x-coordinate is -6 plus b. So I multiply the 2/3 times a -6. That gives me a -4, correct? Okay, so I have a -4 plus b is on the right, -5 on the left. I want to get rid of the 4 so that I can solve for b, which is the y-intercept. And I get b equals -1. So now I am coming back up to that equation right here, and I'm going to plug in what I know for m and for b. So that gives me the equation y equals slope of 2/3 x minus 1. All right. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have several of you go to the board and work a problem out while the rest of you do it at your seats, and we'll walk through them together. So everybody's going to get a chance at the board, so